Hope everyone's having a pleasant day. We're driving into the Virgin River Gorge here shortly, which, believe it or not, in order to get from Nevada to Utah on Interstate 15, coming up from Las Vegas, you actually have to go through Arizona. And most people don't know that, but it's like the far northwestern corner of Arizona. You're in the state for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, but you go through this thing, like I said, called the Virgin River Gorge, which most people have never heard of or seen in their lives, and it's one of the most breathtaking drives you'll ever experience. And it's only about an hour and a half north of Las Vegas. If you haven't never done it, could not recommend it more highly. It's like an ancient prehistoric canyon that goes up 1,000 feet on either side of you as you're driving through it. Just past Mesquite, Nevada, if you know where that is. And we were in Las Vegas for about an hour or two this afternoon on the way back from Northern California to the Midwest. Our 21 F-150 with the diesel is running great. We got one of the last 10 or 15 that were ever made after they canceled it, and they stopped taking orders, I think, in July of 21. This one didn't hit the dealer's lot until March of 22, and it was a custom order. And by the time the truck got to the lot, the buyer had long since gotten tired of waiting and canceled the order. So we were doing a nationwide search at the time, and most of the diesel F-150s that were left at that point were like XL, regular cab, kind of stripped down versions that weren't really that desirable. This is the only one that had any level of content and any level of features that were at all interesting. It's got the 6.5 foot bed, which is really the minimum bed size that you should consider. 4-wheel drive XLT package with the 302A and the 12-inch CarPlay. It's got cloth seats, which, believe it or not, you can actually live without leather. You can live without leather seats if you can accept the fact that you're gonna like sweat and stains and liquid, and your kids' juice boxes and stuff are gonna soak into it. But unlike leather, it's never gonna crack. So it's just a trade-off. No sunroof, and there's really no reason to get a sunroof in a pickup truck. It's just a waste of money. You know it's gonna start leaking after 5 or 6 or 8 years, or the motor's gonna break, or as happened to us, something's gonna hit the roof and maybe put a dent in the roof. And if there was a sunroof, it would have shattered and we would have gotten, 50 gallons of rainwater into the interior. It's just not worth it with it, to get a sunroof. It's got the FX4 package, and we were not in love with the FX4 package for the entire first year that we owned the truck, from spring of 22 to spring of 23. And then when we got this trailer that we're pulling today, the 28-foot Featherlight Gooseneck, which has about 1,500 pounds of hitch weight, maybe 13 to 1,500 when it's empty. I'm going to say closer to 1,000. I haven't done a scientific measurement, but it does weigh hundreds of pounds, or I should say 1,000 plus. The payload on this truck is about 1,650, give or take. On our Power Boost that we used to own, it was 14 something. Another reason not to get the sunroof. And what we discovered when we hitched up the gooseneck for the first time to it, when we were actually test driving it, deciding whether or not to buy it, we were wondering if the weight of the gooseneck on the rear springs was gonna sort of squash them and make them bottom out and make the truck kind of porpoise and make it kind of squirmy and squirrely and turn it into kind of a handful to control. And in the FX4 package, to our pleasant surprise, those stiff shocks that you get, those off-road shocks that you get with the FX4 package, which are really unnecessary otherwise, turn out to be very useful because they do a very good job of controlling the motion of the truck with a lot of payload or with a heavy gooseneck trailer hitched up to it. So very impressive. So here we go. We're heading into the Virgin River Gorge. And if you've never experienced it, which we never had until I think 2018, never knew it was there. And then you go into it and you're just like, holy crap, this is one of the most amazing experiences ever. It's like driving through almost like the White River National Forest in Colorado, if you know where that is. or somewhat like that canyon that comes down when you're coming down from Park City into the Salt Lake City area. It's similar to that, but you can see like they've blasted like 100 or 200 feet solid out of this side of this mountain here in order to put the highway in. And it's just indescribably pretty. It's impossible to do it justice, either in pictures or on a video. And it goes for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 miles. And I think there's a campsite or two. Just a very, very pretty view. Ideal if you're not driving. The truck is continuing to astonish and surprise us with its ability to tackle steep uphill and downhill grades. It made it through the Rocky Mountains on Interstate 80, going through Wyoming a couple days ago. It made it through the Sierra Nevadas yesterday, up and over like Donner Pass, coming west from Reno on Interstate 80, no problem with the uphill or the steep downhill grades. The downhills, once you get past like Lake Tahoe and Truckee, are very steep and pretty long too. And we weren't sure how the truck and the trailer would perform. And the truck, and it did just fine. It did absolutely fine. Tomorrow we're going to be going through the front range of the Rockies on Interstate 70, up through like Vail Pass, up through Loveland Pass, and that's going to be the ultimate test of this truck and its engine. We got a little bit less weight than we did yesterday morning. We're not empty. We got 4 pallets of freight, actually 5, that we picked up in Las Vegas, and it's not quite as much as we were hauling out west from Michigan to DLA in Tracy in Northern California. We're at like I think we're at like 13,000 pounds today. Yesterday morning, before we unloaded, we were at like 14,000 pounds. So the weight of the cargo today is around, I'm going to say 1,300 or 1,400 pounds. Not quite the 2,000 or 2,500 that we dragged out west. So it's lighter, and you can tell. I mean, you can definitely tell when it's unloaded. After you've been pulling it heavily loaded for a while. Again, we were at 14,000 pounds yesterday morning, headed west through the Sierra Nevadas. By the afternoon, after we unloaded, we were down to like 11.7. And we went south through the Central Valley, up over the Tehachapi Mountains, and then in on I-15 through like Barstow into Las Vegas this morning, loaded up this afternoon, and now we're just about cubed out, give or take. But we're not remotely weighted out. We're at, like I said, 13,000 all in. That's about a 6,000 pound truck and a 7,000 pound trailer. Just not a big deal. If you're wondering if you should get one of these, if you should search around and find a used one, they're pretty hard to find because not a lot were made, because not a lot of people bought them to begin with, because to be honest, Ford didn't do a good job of selling them. And Ford normally is extremely good at selling trucks or selling whatever they make, especially trucks and SUVs. And so their inability to put more of these into the hands of pickup truck drivers is kind of surprising and disappointing. But when you drive it, it does not drive like a hot rod, and people have almost gotten used to the way an EcoBoost drives, the way it launches, and just the enormous amount of horsepower and torque. I mean, the first EcoBoost that came out, like back in the day, in like 2011, had, what was it, 365, 345 horsepower, 400 plus, 420 pound-feet of torque. I mean, that's intoxicating. You get used to that, and it's hard to go back to anything. And again, the EcoBoost, we didn't believe it until we owned one, until we owned the PowerBoost. I mean, it is not just enormously powerful at any RPM, at any road speed, with any amount of payload or trailer hitched up. It's just effortless in the power that it makes. It never feels like it's working that hard. It sounds very, very good, the sort of growl that it makes for a V6. You know, it's not your V8, classic V8 sound like you get in a Hemi or like you get in a Coyote V8. But you don't even mind, because it's just got it just sounds great. And it makes you want to push it harder and harder, because it never ever complains and never feels like it's under stress. And so for someone who gets used to an EcoBoost or a Power Boost, driving this truck is definitely a step down in terms of its power and its torque and its willingness to just launch. You know, it's low range, it's mid range, its ability to rev. This thing, you know, it's a diesel, so it doesn't like to rev. You know, it's pretty much all done making power by the time you get past 2,800 RPMs. There is 0 point whatsoever to rev a diesel, at least this diesel, to 3,000 and beyond. And so it's just an entirely different experience than driving a gas engine. And it's just like the experience we have with our cheating diesel VW Passat that we bought. Our second one of those that we bought. You know, I mean, it'll go. It's just not going to really enjoy it. And so I guess for that reason, you know, Ford didn't sell a lot of these. The Max, you could not get it with the heavy duty payload package. You could only get the it's called the HDPP with a 3.5 EcoBoost or a 5-liter Coyote. And so you're not loading the bed up to like 2,500 or 3,000 pounds with payload or with hitch weight. You could get the 3-liter diesel with the Max Tow package, which I think takes the GCWR, gross combined weight rating, all the way out to like 18,000+. And if you had a short enough final drive, like a 373 final drive, yeah, the diesel would probably be able to handle a 10 or 12,000 pound conventional or gooseneck trailer, you know, with a reasonable amount of without too much difficulty going up or downhill. This thing, again, with the 331, to our absolute astonishment, does not mind dragging an 8,000 pound trailer up and over the Rocky Mountains or the Sierra Nevadas. Wouldn't have believed it until we did it ourselves a couple days ago. The one downfall being that it's, you know, the engine braking, it's there, and it's going to keep you from getting killed. It's going to keep your truck from running away on you or taking off on you going downhill. It's just not going to give you the level of control you expect from a like a heavy duty that has the exhaust brake functionality. And we've already discussed that at length. But for instance, you know, where we are right now, going 55, we just had to clear through some traffic, and now we're trying to accelerate uphill. This diesel will actually accelerate uphill, pulling a 7,000 pound trailer. It's not like some of these other trucks that you get into, where you gotta carry a huge amount of speed coming out of a downhill into an uphill in order to have any chance of making it up, like our 5.9 Cummins, which does not do that well in steep mountains with a decent sized trailer. It's just entirely unhappy going up or down with anything more than about 3,000 to 5,000 pounds hitched up to it. But this thing, you know, like I said, this diesel F-150 with 8,000 pounds coming out west, it was just no drama. And with 7,000 pounds going back east, again, you know, we'll find out tomorrow how well it does in the front range of the Rockies and going through those 11,000 foot mountain passes, like the Ike Gauntlet, if you know what that is, like from Silverthorne headed east on 70 from the Breckenridge area, headed towards the Eisenhower Tunnel, like you know, straight uphill for 8 or 10 or 15 minutes. This morning, coming through Death Valley, if you know Baker, California, where they got the so-called world's tallest thermometer, when you leave Baker headed east on I-15, you go uphill for 15 minutes, and it's reasonably steep, and it's a very good test of your cooling and of your power. And you know, we did it once in an expedition with about a 3,000 or 4,000 pound trailer, and it smoked the expedition with the old 5.4 modular V8. It smoked it, and it you know, the temp gauge, you could just see that temp gauge creeping up, and it got so hot that the air conditioning cut out, and we had to slow down to a crawl to keep from overheating and like blowing the radiator. This thing today, and we had it at like 70 miles an hour going uphill in 7th or 8th gear, and we kept watching those temp gauges, waiting for the engine or the transmission temp to start creeping up, and they never did. And it wasn't that hot today. It was like 75 or 80 this morning, but again, just not an issue. So we're going to change a lot of what we said about this truck in the past, in terms of what we would do with it, or what we would, you know, trust it to do, or how and where and when we would employ it. We're very, very pleasantly surprised by it. I'll point out one thing that happened today, and I guess you could call it the first mechanical issue that it's had. The air conditioning cut out at around 9 or 10 this morning when we left Tehachapi. And so we had no AC coming through Death Valley. We had no AC all afternoon in Las Vegas. Fortunately, again, it was only 75 or 80, maybe 85. But it was a little bit disconcerting in a truck that's only 3 years old, 3.5 years old, has only 82,000 miles, to have the AC crap out. And we haven't even begun to do the diagnostics on it, you know. Is it a slow leak in, you know, one of the fittings? Did we, you know, did the condenser get a rock chip or something and have a leak? Is the compressor clutch not, you know, who knows? We'll do all those diagnostics, but it's just a little bit annoying to have a 3-year-old truck lose the AC. You know, our 22-year-old Ram 3500. As far as I can remember, we've never had trouble with the AC in that thing. We did have the blend doors crap out on us. Actually, when we bought it, the blend doors didn't work, and so it had no heat for the first like 6 or 8 months that we owned it, until we got the blend doors fixed, which involves practically taking apart the entire dashboard, and it's a lot. It's like an 8 or 10 hour job to fix that. But in our 22-year-old Ram 3500 with the 5.9 Cummins, I don't think we've ever had the AC crap out on that thing. So as of today, we now have had our first mechanical problem with this 21 F-150. And you know, we're going east now, and it's end of October, beginning of November, so I don't expect we'll run into a ton of heat, ton of hot weather from this point forward. And when we get home and get the trailer unhitched and unloaded, we'll send it in, or just run some diagnostics ourselves and see what the deal is. But other than that, overall, this truck has, I mean, I'm just going to say it over and over and over, impressed the hell out of us. And if you're interested in getting one, you'll have to do a lot of searching. But there are owners that are starting to get ready, you know, starting to think about parting ways with them. You know, people have had them for 5 or 6 or 8 years at this point. 7 years since they first came out in 2018. In the start of 26, you'll start to see some 8-year-old models. And there are so many reasons why you'd want one of these. The F-150 platform itself is just a tremendous truck. And when it came out when the diesel came out in 18, that was like the previous refresh from the Gen 14 that we have, which came out in 21. And there's a lot of reasons you'd want a 21, because the 21 is a lot better than the 18 through 20 in a lot of ways. The one that keeps coming to mind is the fact that the 21 has the lane centering system and the lane keeping system, which makes a long drive, like a 2 or 3 or 5,000 mile drive, so much easier. And you're only going to get that if you buy a 21. And so that makes it very, very hard to find one, because it was like the last year they made these things. And the Power Boost had just come out, and a lot of people were switching over to the Power Boost. Not sure the exact number they sold of 21 diesel F-150s, but it just was not a lot. And so you're going to have a hard time finding one. If you do, though, it's going to be well worth it. You're going to have to do that regular diesel maintenance that you have to do, with every other diesel you buy. You're looking at injectors every now and then. You're looking at fuel filter, every other oil change. And I said every 30,000 miles last time we talked. It's not every 30,000. It's like closer to every 10 or 15,000. Because you're doing oil changes every 5,000, maybe every 7,000, if you stretch it way out. You got to watch out for the fact that, like in California, they got this B20 diesel fuel, which can easily cause trouble for your CP4. And this truck does have a CP4, as does the Super Duty, the 6.7 and the Super Duty. So you gotta make sure to put additive in, like a friction or a lubricity additive, to keep from having your CP4 ruined by California B20 biodiesel. Little stuff like that. You gotta accept the fact that any F-150 that's newer than about, I'm just gonna say any EcoBoost, or starting in 2011, these trucks started getting more and more complicated. Like the 04 to 09 or whatever, when it was still just a 5.4 liter V8, that was a relatively simple and very durable truck. We know there was issues with the 3-valve 5.4, got it. But overall, the truck was not that bad to maintain. That starting in 2015, they had an aluminum body. Before that point, it was just a steel body, so you're going to get a lot of rust in any used F-150 you buy from before 2015. But if you buy one from 2015 or later, these trucks just kept getting more and more complicated, and that creates like a level of overhead that you just have to be aware of, and a level of expense that you're going to have to undergo to maintain it and keep it running. And so whereas you think you're getting a deal by buying a fully depreciated truck that's 10 years old, getting into it's going to be easy, but the maintenance on these things, it just gets more and more expensive by the year. If you get like a 2015 through 17, and maybe it's the 5-liter Coyote V8, okay, it's still got that old 6R80 6-speed transmission, very, very durable, very dependable. Starting in 2018, they had the 10R80, and if you want a diesel, you're going to have to get the 10R80 because there was no diesel prior to 2018 when the 10R80 became standard across the board. So that's just something to keep in mind. We've got a 10R80, we've got a 10-speed in this truck, and it's not giving us any issues. But we've just got in the back of our head that, like, this transmission and that stupid CDF drum bushing, if you got it prior to like August of 22, that's going to cost a fortune to maintain. I think it's what did Flying Wrenches say? He charges like $5 or $6 grand because the parts keep getting more expensive. And he noticed that the parts get more expensive as the trucks start to come out of warranty. Because Ford, which is very good at taking your money on a new truck, is also very good at taking your money when you're trying to maintain an older truck. So that's something to keep in mind. But would we buy a used diesel F-150? Absolutely. And we'd accept the fact that there's just a lot of maintenance it's going to take. This 12-inch screen, when this thing starts acting up, Jesus. when these gauges or the little center information screen starts acting up, yeah, that's going to cost a fortune. Maybe like some random button in the steering wheel is going to crap out, or maybe the sound system. You know, there's just an absolutely tremendous amount of complexity in these trucks, and it makes keeping an older one running extremely difficult for somebody who's trying to be economic. Going through St. George, Utah right now. It's a neat, I would say a neat little town, but it's more like a neat little city. And it's growing because a lot of retirees are moving here. A lot of remote workers are moving here, even though there aren't quite as many remote workers as there were 3 to 5 years ago during like pandemic times. But it's just a neat area because it only gets up to like 85 or 90 in the summer, when Vegas is at like at 105 or 110, or Phoenix. St. George is in the like upper 80s or 90s, and it's just very pretty geographically. There's great hiking, very, very safe, and it's a nice, quiet, small city. All right, I think that's it for now. Hope everyone's having a great Halloween, which is today, the 31st of October. And we'll, we'll be going through Colorado with this thing tomorrow, and we'll find out the final verdict on how well the diesel can handle something like the Ike Gauntlet and an 11,000-foot mountain pass, towing a decent-sized trailer. More to follow soon. All right, thanks, everyone.